Dubrovnik in July is wall-to-wall tourists, for cruise ships docked at once in the harbor, a 40-minute queue just to walk the city walls, and barely enough room to move along the main street without bumping into someone's selfie stick. Now look at this, same coastline, same Venetian architecture, same warm Adriatic light, just 45 minutes south, and almost nobody's here. This is Kotor, Montenegro. And I genuinely think it's about to become the next Dubrovnik. Which is exactly why you should go now, before the secret gets out and the crowds follow. If you're new here, I make videos comparing Europe's most popular, most photographed destinations with the quieter alternatives sitting right next door, so you can actually figure out where to go before you spend money booking flights and hotels. I've spent real time in both Dubrovnik and Kotor this year, walking the same streets, eating at the same kinds of places, and dealing with the same summer heat, and I want to walk you through the honest difference between them, not the polished postcard version you see on every travel account, but what it actually feels like to stand there. Let's start with the actual problem in Dubrovnik. The old town is tiny, you can walk across the whole thing in about 15 minutes. But on a peak summer day, it's absorbing tens of thousands of visitors, a huge share of them dumped off cruise ships for a few hours at a time before sailing off again. The city had to introduce caps on cruise passenger numbers because the crowding got so severe it was damaging both the visitor experience and the centuries-old stone infrastructure underneath everyone's feet. Walking the Stradun at midday, you're not really sightseeing anymore, you're shuffling forward in a slow-moving human current, and getting a clean photo without 40 strangers wandering into frame is basically impossible no matter how early you try. Kotor is the opposite experience in almost every way that matters. Same fortified old town, same red-roofed Venetian buildings packed tightly along narrow stone streets, the same kind of dramatic Mediterranean backdrop. Except here it's steep mountains plunging straight down into a deep, almost fjord-like bay instead of open coastline. You can walk those same cobblestone streets without constantly dodging tour groups holding numbered flags. You can climb the ancient fortress walls rising above the town and actually pause to take in the view instead of getting pushed along by a line of people behind you. It's not completely empty, Kotor gets its share of visitors too. But it's a fraction of what Dubrovnik absorbs, and it still feels like a real, lived-in town rather than a stage set built for tourists. I want to be honest with you, though, because this isn't meant to be a one-sided ad for Montenegro. Kotor isn't perfect. It's considerably smaller than Dubrovnik, so you'll run out of things to see and do much faster, often within a single day. The restaurant scene is less developed too, with fewer high-end options and a smaller range of cuisines to choose from. If what you actually want out of a trip is nightlife, variety, or a big selection of fine dining, Dubrovnik still wins on those fronts pretty clearly. This video isn't Kotor good, Dubrovnik bad, it's about understanding what each place genuinely gives you, so you can match the destination to the trip you actually want to have. Now let's talk about money, because this is where Kotor really pulls ahead and where the numbers start to feel almost unfair. A comparable hotel room that runs you somewhere around €200 a night in Dubrovnik during peak season can often be found for closer to €80 or €100 in Kotor, sometimes less if you book outside the absolute peak weeks. A sit-down meal that costs €30+ per person on the Stradun is closer to €15 or €20 in Kotor's old town, for food that's frequently just as good, if not better. Walking tours, boat trips, and entrance fees follow that same pattern almost everywhere you look, which means you're often paying roughly half as much for a comparable, and sometimes genuinely superior, experience overall. If you do make it to Kotor, there are a few specific things worth doing rather than just wandering aimlessly. Climb the Kotor city walls early in the morning, before the heat sets in and before the day trippers start arriving from the coast. It's one of the best views on the entire Adriatic, and you'll likely have long, quiet stretches of the climb almost entirely to yourself. Take a short boat out to Our Lady of the Rocks, a small artificial island with a chapel built on it near the nearby town of Perast. It's a quieter, almost surreal stop that most Dubrovnik-only travelers never even hear about. And make a point of eating at least one meal somewhere away from the main square, where prices drop noticeably and the food gets a lot more local and a lot less tourist menu. Logistically, this is an easy add-on if you're already flying into Dubrovnik for your trip. There are direct buses that take roughly 2.5 hours along a genuinely scenic coastal route, and the border crossing into Montenegro is generally straightforward with minimal hassle. Most travelers I've talked to treat Kotor as a long day trip and head straight back that same evening, but I'd actually recommend staying at least one night if your schedule allows it. The town empties out almost completely after the day trip buses leave, and that quiet evening atmosphere is when Kotor feels the most special and the most worth the detour. Here's the bigger point I want to leave you with, though. Montenegro's tourism numbers have been climbing fast over the last several years, and Kotor is already showing up on more travel lists, more influencer feeds, and more hidden gem videos, including, admittedly, this one right now. Places like this rarely stay quiet forever once word STA starts spreading online. The window where you can experience Kotor the way I just showed you, calm streets and all, is closing rather than staying open indefinitely, and that's worth keeping in mind if this is on your list. So here's the real question I'd genuinely like to know: would you trade the photo opportunities and restaurant variety of Dubrovnik for the quiet, the slower pace, and the lower price tag of Kotor? Let me know what you'd pick down in the comments below. And if you want to see how Montenegro stacks up against another overrated European hotspot, I've got another video linked right here that breaks that comparison down in just as much detail. A few people always ask me about safety and ease of travel when I cover lesser-known spots like this, so let me cover that quickly before you go. Kotor is genuinely one of the easier places in the Balkans to navigate as a first-timer. English is widely spoken in the tourist areas, the euro is the currency even though Montenegro isn't in the EU, and the town itself is small enough that you really can't get lost for long. Every street in the old town eventually spits you back out near one of the main gates. If you're coming from Western Europe, you don't need a visa for short stays, and if you're coming from further afield, it's worth double-checking your specific situation. But for most travelers, this is a low-friction add-on rather than a complicated extra step in your trip. The other question I get a lot is timing. When's the actual best window to visit if you want the quiet version of Kotor rather than the increasingly busy one? Based on what I saw and what locals told me while I was there, late May to early June and then again in September tend to give you the best balance. The weather's still warm enough to swim and sit outside comfortably, but you're missing the absolute peak crush of July and August when cruise traffic spikes and the day trip buses from Dubrovnik run constantly. If you can only travel in peak summer, I'd still say go. Just get to the city walls and the old town as early in the morning as you can manage, ideally before 9, because the difference between an 8 a.m. Kotor and a 1 p.m. Kotor in August is honestly night and day. One more thing worth mentioning, because I think it's easy to overlook when you're chasing the quiet alternative to somewhere famous: don't treat Kotor purely as a Dubrovnik substitute. It's worth visiting on its own terms, not just as the place you go because the other place got too crowded. The bay itself, the way the mountains drop straight into the water, the layout of the old town against that backdrop, that's a genuinely distinct experience from anything Dubrovnik offers, crowds aside. I think the comparison framing is useful for figuring out where to spend your time and money, but once you're actually there, it's worth letting Kotor be its own destination rather than constantly measuring it against somewhere else. If this kind of breakdown is useful to you, the best thing you can do is subscribe, because I've got several more of these comparisons planned, covering other spots across the Balkans that I think are heading in the same direction Kotor is right now, places that are still relatively calm but probably won't stay that way for long. I'd genuinely rather help people get there before that changes than after. That brings us to the end of this one. Thanks for watching all the way through. Let me know in the comments which of these two you'd actually pick for your own trip, and I'll see you in the next video.